Right, okay, we're ready for our, I suppose, penultimate event of the evening before the happy hour. So we're back to the stage. Welcome for a great customer from Canva. We've got Cameron and James Bayer, who is our head of engineering.
Product management.
Product man, I'm very sorry.
Close enough.
I really should read the notes. Okay, and we'll head up, so over to you guys for the fireside chat. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just set the context here a bit. I'm joined by these two esteemed gentlemen. We're going to talk about security lifecycle management. Maybe before we get started, James, I think people have heard a little bit from Fawaz. Why don't you tell us about your role? Impressive title, but what does that mean?
Sure. So I've been at HashiCorp about 5 years. I've always been in middleware my whole career, and I've loved the infrastructure space. So I actually got to know Dave McJanet at our former company, and I kept in touch with him as I went and did something different, and he went to HashiCorp. And about 5 years ago, there was an opportunity to come work at HashiCorp. I've been following them, so I've been here ever since, and had a great time working, meeting all these kinds of customers, these kinds of events. The roundtable discussions that we just had were just great, and so that's the kind of stuff I love, living in this stuff. So I get to work with the engineering team, with our design teams, and take this feedback that we're getting at the conference like this and put that back into the roadmap.
Sweet. So it sounds a bit more like anything people say here, you can make happen in the product.
Anything. Yeah.
And Fawaz, quick intro. We heard your amazing presentation earlier. Tell us a little bit more about your team. What you guys are doing, as it probably relates a little bit to security lifecycle management.
Sure, 100%. So I'll say it at the top, head of infrastructure at Canva. Our organization includes our data platform, cloud platform, reliability, and our developer platform. So just in those names, you can probably infer that there's so much cross-cutting that has to do with security there, and we have a love-hate relationship with our security organization. It's a fine balance between them controlling our roadmap and us, meeting the needs of the business for compliance and all the other reasons. But yeah, it's a very interesting space where we get to sort of what we say internally is be secure by default, right? Like, don't keep folks on the guardrails, give them the paved road so that they can't get themselves in trouble, and we try and build that throughout everything we do.
Sweet. So I've got a few questions here that I'm going to use to have a conversation, but I just want to let people know that maybe for the last 10 minutes or so, there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask these two people some questions. So if you've got some questions, we'd love for you to just write them down, and then toward the end, we'll go around if that's okay. So James, if you don't mind, I'm going to kick off with a question for yourself. Yeah. We know that when people start with Vault, they tend to gravitate toward maybe using the key value pair kind of as a use case. Store some secrets, get some secrets out. That's just the start. And what we heard from Armon, this morning was, in terms of security lifecycle management, there's a lot more to it. So I guess my question is, as it relates to security, what does lifecycle management mean for you? And then why is static secrets just the beginning? Where are we going from there?
Yeah. Well, I think as I've gotten more exposure to the security space, because it was really at HashiCorp where I really spent more time on it. And talking to customers, you just realize that the problem doesn't end when you securely store something and access control it. And I think we saw this in the customer presentations this afternoon, or a little bit earlier today. They were talking about how much stop the world work had to happen and manual work had to happen for rotations. And so they were summing that up in terms of FTE hours and amount of time it took, and it was a lot of time. Another example of this, one of the breaches that happened last year, Cloudflare, where they had an instance happen with their Okta. And what they ended up having to do is they had to get an inventory of all of their secrets and rotate them. And what they do? They actually blogged about this. You can go check this out and look at it. They were very upfront and helpful for everyone we could learn from what they ended up doing. They didn't have an inventory of all their secrets, so they basically said, stop all the engineering work. Mm-hmm. Everybody in R&D, you're now on the security team for the next 2 weeks. And they didn't get any forward innovation happening in those 2 weeks. And at the end of it, what they were able to do is go through all the inventory of their secrets, rotate them, and check that a couple different times, and then finally say okay, we got it. Well, they still ended up missing a couple, and then that ended up biting them later. But if you can imagine that, so that example that Armand showed earlier in the day, this is kind of subtle, but there was a button, and you could do in the drop down, you say rotate now. So imagine if you, number one, knew all of your secrets and they were all tied to a rotate now. There is no 2 weeks stop all the R&D team, right? It is, we just go hit the rotate now button on all the secrets and then we're kind of done. So that's the vision of what we're trying to do, is trying to take all the toil out of this kind of stuff. Cloudflare is not a slouch organization. They're pretty sophisticated, and it's still a challenge for them. So we realize it's a big challenge for so many. And so that's what kind of motivates me about this. It's a big opportunity.
Awesome to hear. It sounds like a big journey. Fawaz, if I don't mind asking you then, where do you think you guys are on that journey? And then, in terms of getting to a more dynamic style of secrets management, what's the key learnings that you've had to come across and kind of share?
Yeah, 100%. I think we are doing dynamic secrets, but the beachhead is there. We now have to expand and make sure it's cross-cutting across everything. I think the way we look at security, at least in our platform organization, how we sell it in some ways to the rest of Canva is, at least with our teams, I never want to run a security project, which sounds crazy. But the goal actually is that in everything that we do, security becomes so ingrained as a requirement, as a way of operating, that we never have to explicitly go after it. Is now we're doing this to secure A, B, C, whatever that is. And when you extend that sort of bleeds into how we look at our customers, our internal users who use all the things that we build. To go off and mint a token and then have to save it somewhere that is safe and then make sure it doesn't get checked in, that's a lot of cognitive overhead that you have times 1,000, if not more, engineers having to do, and they're going to get it wrong and they're going to check in a thing they shouldn't. So we look at it as, again, I talked about it this morning, platform as an enablement function. We're enabling them to get to their outcomes faster by not having to think about these things. And that helps tell that story of look, it's not you have to do this new security thing and deal with Vault or deal with whatever interface we give them, but rather here's work we're taking away so you as an engineer can go off and do the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah, in the context of the cost, speed, and risk, then where do you see enabling them to have this stuff embedded help? Is that driving innovation faster? Is it
100%. It's 100%. It's a trade-off and who does what sort of thing in that triangle, right? The broad engineering gets the speed. We take on the risk by making sure we're doing the baseline, and then cost is cross-cutting across everything, which is a bit more shared.
James, where do you see? So this is a great example of Canva's journey. Where do you see customers? How do they go on that journey from evolving from key value to other things? So they start with Pick AI. Do they start with something different? Kubernetes secrets. How do you see customers evolve?
Well, a lot of them are similar. They pretty much all don't know where their secrets are at the beginning, or they know that they have a problem and they're not quite sure how the problem is. So just setting up some patterns of okay, first can we at least find them, store them safely, access control them, and that's gets you pretty far. But then you realize there's still all the extra stuff that we talked about, rotation and thing. That kind of what we call the funnel at the top, where you have unmanaged secrets, you don't even know where they all are. And then the next stage down is okay, now they're vaulted. And this is from Armand's presentation earlier, right? And then the next stage is rotated secrets, and then dynamic secrets that are just really short-lived. That actually came from one of our very sophisticated customers that in financial services that's heavily regulated. They said, this is our problem. If you can help us solve this, this is the whole ball game. And they've been using Vault but they had to build a whole bunch of stuff around it to really do all the things they wanted to do. And so now we're trying to just say, okay, it worked for them, but they had to do a bunch of work. Can we simplify that as much as possible? That goes back to that rotate now button. It's we didn't really have that capability earlier, and now we're building that in so then everybody can benefit from that. So it's really learning from customers. That's actually what we're trying to do, is just figure out the patterns. some customers have started outside of static secrets. So some customers have said, actually, we had an outage, certificate expired, took everything down. That's happened 3 times in the last month. At some point, someone's going to say, we're not going to do that a 4th time. Right. So they might start on certificates. So we have seen customers start on, PKI or some other security finding might motivate them to start with key management or data protection as a different place to start. But most often it's secrets.
Mm-hmm. And then where do you see them prioritize that stuff? Like, Vault can handle encryption as a service. Vault can handle, format preserving encryption. It can do heaps of things, KMIP, etc. How should organizations here prioritize those around, which one to do next for the business?
Yeah, I mean, from just seeing lots and lots of customers, if you have no urgent need because you've had a security finding or failed a compliance test or something, I'd just say start with secrets, because that's generally, there's a lot of risk. And we know this from, I'm not sure how many of you know the Verizon data breach report. It's a really phenomenal piece of, collection of an annual look at the trends in the industry for security. And we know from that report that the vast majority of breaches involve stolen credentials. So if you don't have a compliance finding might just tell you, you're gonna do this priority first. But if you have no opinion, you go to that report and say, we're probably like everybody else, and secrets is probably a problem for us. So that's why I'd say start there, unless you have some other really compelling reason to go elsewhere.
And then you mentioned as part of that, trying to find those secrets, right? Obviously, once they're leaked, someone else has found them. What are the kind of things that people are doing to try and find secrets before they're leaked, if they haven't gone down the path of something a bit more dynamic?
Yeah, so something, again, Armand mentioned in his talk earlier today was this company we acquired last year at this time called Blue Bracket. And for the longest time, we had the ability to put secrets and store them safely in Vault, access control them. But it was your job to do that, right? We didn't help you find the secrets out there. And so the Blue Bracket was all about doing this. And so, Armand showed us one of that in one of the demos today. Not only can we scan source code repositories, now we can start scanning Confluence and Jira and these other systems, so that we can do a lot of discovery on where your unmanaged secrets are, start characterizing that for you, and even add value to tell you what's this quote unquote blast radius of the secret, because, not only is this a secret, but it's a really important secret, and so this has now been exposed, and you should do something about that, right? So that's what we now call Vault Radar. So we're bringing that to market, and customers are giving us really great feedback about that. So pretty excited to bring that kind of unmanaged secrets and help the discovery process along with the Vault capabilities too.
And then Fawaz, from your point of view, how do you guys approach that? Are you trying to scan for secrets? Are you looking at breaches and trying to mitigate that through the same methods?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously not using Vault Radar yet, but we have secret scanning in sort of throughout all of our code repositories and environments as well. So yeah, 100%. You can move and migrate that first wave across, but unless you stem the bleeding, because people will do the wrong thing, it almost doesn't count for anything, because there will be things that come on.
What does remediation look like for you guys? You've used a tool, you've found something that shouldn't be where it is. How do you go about solving that problem?
Essentially, it's handled as an incident, as a security incident, a special type of incident, where the right channel, the right on-call gets pinged, the right folks get involved, and until it's completely mitigated, that incident is on.
Tell us a little bit about the scale that you operated. We saw in the video,
yes.
A lot of secrets rotated.
Yeah.
What's been your approach to building that self-service system for teams leveraging Vault?
Yeah, I brought the numbers down because I'm never going to remember them. we have 41,000 sessions a day, minting and using about 50,000 dynamic secrets every day, every single day, exactly, across multiple clouds, various SaaS vendors, the whole lot, right? So all across the engineering footprint. really the approach was, and I touched on it maybe too early, was really around the enablement and self-service function, right? We looked at what are the user flows, what are the different things that an engineer, when they're trying to do X, have to click through, and et cetera, and how can we optimize that, bring that time down, ensure that they only are needing to think about the things that are necessary and not the things that we can make simpler and easier for them, really.
So 50,000 sounds like a journey. How
Yes.
did you go from getting a single team on board to multiple teams? What are the kind of things you enabled them to do, either self-service or documentation?
Yeah, 100%. I think Mo covers this a lot better in his talk than I will, but at a high level, it's really building that trust. It comes back to. Before we onboarded a single secret, we looked at all of the user flows and the user journeys and built SLAs around them of like, here's what it takes today. And instrumented that. And then before actually moving anything across, we had that instrumented in and across Vault and all of our internal flows and the service that we built on top of Vault to go, this is what it looks like. So as we move things across, one, we could measure success rate, and two, we could actually objectively tell those early adopters that, hey, look, we have the evidence to go, this came down from X number of days to minutes, if not seconds. And then, you build that trust, and you expand and roll out to the next one, the next one, the next one.
James, from your point of view, how are other customers tackling self-service? How are they approaching getting to 50,000 rotations a day?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat similar in that you find some patterns that you want to use. And this is one thing Vault can do lots of different things. So you don't have to customers make different choices. I've definitely seen that. So some customers use the Vault secrets operator for Kubernetes. Some customers, and we had this example earlier today in the talks, use the Vault agent injector, which is a different style of doing that. So I think at your organization, you need to empower people to help set the patterns that are going to comply with your organizational standards, and then document and make those easily available to your teams. We've seen really investing in high quality of those shared patterns and that they work, so that it builds up the trust in the teams that are going to use it. Because if their first experience is, oh, this is crap, it doesn't work, or I don't understand it, they're not going to be on board. They're going to find another path around and try and work around it, and it might be an insecure way that they're trying to do it, right? So I think that was one big example. Another one, and this is goes back to some of the how you get started. You saw in one of the presentations earlier today downstairs, they said at one point we didn't have our paths right in Vault. That's just like kind of how you find something. And so they went back and they redesigned that. So if you can get that right up front, like with Vault namespaces and the path architecture you're using, that helps sets up the tenancy, because then you can say, hey, this team, you can kind of self-service yourself maybe within this, and we used the term guardrails earlier when we were talking about this, right? Within those guardrails, you're kind of able to self-service, and if you go out and outside of that, okay, now you got to contact a centralized team. But getting those things up, kind of set up right at the beginning for your organization, super important, because if you kind of start going pretty far down the path, it can take a little bit to kind of get that back in order.
Just to quickly add, I just remember a point I missed around. There's some obvious plugins for the various vendors that we have and SaaS service that we have that the central platform team will own. So that's sort of our CI, all of our database and persistence layer access and things like that. There will be secrets across the organization that aren't so core. OpenAI is coming to mind as one that that's one part of the business uses, but it's not that central. So what we've also looked at and actually rolled out, and that's a lot of education on that, is how do you then add the custom plugins and develop that yourself with our education and our experience of we've done this for some things, how other parts of the organization can then build on top of that to ensure that, again, we make it easy for them to do the right thing and add those extension points themselves, which limit the blast radius of not having these tokens floating around.
Right. So in the context of self-service, you're saying it's incumbent on teams to kind of build
where it makes sense. Yes, 100%.
Right.
So to increase the coverage across all of the possible use cases of where tokens and secrets are, that's a way, because again, platforms can't be bottlenecks, because if everything is falling on us, there's not enough time.
Yeah, amazing. So at that point now where if you've got a question, would love to hear it. Charlie, I don't know if you want to rove around with your mic, but if anyone's got a question, chuck your hand up. Charlie can facilitate the mic. Half a hand. Everyone's silent.
No roadmap requests from any of you. Okay, I'm going to take that home with me.
Can I ask a question in that case? Obviously, James, you speak to a lot of customers around the world. What does a really mature customer look like? What's the, what are the characteristics you see, and what are some of the value they're driving from that?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to this concept of a platform team and really enabling and empowering them. I think it's not cheap to hire people, usually pretty skilled, experienced people to do this work. But the ones that do that really well take that very seriously. And now they're able to come talk at conferences and share super impressive stats. But the teams that have struggled have not done that, right? And they say, oh, we'll just let people figure it out, and I'm sure it'll be fine. We hire smart people. And those organizations struggle more. Another thing that I think you mentioned, and I don't know exactly if it works this way at Canva, but I can tell for sure how it works at HashiCorp, is having the security team, and this is really kind of a cross-functional way of looking at it. Instead of viewing themselves as, I'm a security person only, and I work on the security team, it's like, I work actually on the Vault team, wearing the security hat. I identify with the Vault team. I'm friends with the engineers, the product people, the designers on the Vault team. And so I can influence their security. Now, at your organization, it might be, a widget or something else, not making Vault. But not seeing that security person as the kind of the say no person, they seeing them as a partner and on the team. I think that's a key aspect of success, because then now they're close, right? And they can advise and help you on secure patterns, and instead of like working on a project for 2 years and then doing the security review a day before production and finding like this list this long, go fix all these things, and by the way, your project's going to be behind 6 months.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear that.
100%. And just to double down on that, like our teams or teams in the infrastructure group, they seek out security well before they're even designing and architecting things. So that partnership goes both ways of like, we've understood and trust the guardrails that they will provide us. And on the flip side, security also has that trust and relationship to go, oh, I get how you're not going to do the gold standard today, but here's how it's coming on the roadmap, and that partnership works really well.
Good.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, pardon me. There we go.
Thank you. The part of the organisation I live in, I think we're at the point where we realise we've got things to do with secrets. So getting that under control, how long and how much effort is that? I mean, it obviously depending on the size of your organisation, but is it a really, really big task? Is there a good way to attack it? Any advice?
So that financial services organization, it's really large that I was telling you. They've been doing it for multiple years, and Armand knows this. He's visited and friends with their CISO, and that I'd say they've been doing this for like 3 + 4 years, something like that, Armand. And so what they do is they're measuring progress on that funnel by categorizing, hey, we have a bunch of static secrets today, and that's step one, but we want to move them down that next layer, like get as many of those to be automatically rotated so I don't have to manually nag people to rotate it. And so that's what they measure themselves on. How fast are they moving down to the more, in the ideal way? And we had a presentation, downstairs about, talking about workload identity federation. You use the identity, you don't even have a secret, right? The secret, the trust is set up through the identity. So like if you can, that's how they do this over the years. But they started passing audits like 3-4 years ago. It's just that there's still a lot of toil and there can be more efficiency. So I'd say look at it as something that you have to fund for a long, sustained period of time. It's evergreen, and then you can just make it better and better. But the Verizon Data Breach Report is a very inspiring way. Well, I'm sure many of you probably saw the Snowflake customers examples recently, right? There's lots of inspiring stories for people that want to not wind up in the papers, right? And so I think hopefully that motivates people to make the right investments.
Yeah, those stories are great, absolutely. Like for just another point of reference, like we'll 2.5, 3 years to get to where we are today, and we're not done. So it is a multi-year journey. It's hard to prove a negative sort of thing, right? Especially to if, again, any CFOs in the room, sorry, but especially to CFOs, of like, but why, right? It's like that's not a problem today. That is hard. But stories like the ones you pointed out, like that helps make that case, and that is why, as I mentioned before, we really approach it as an enablement of, look, here's the efficiency we gain in engineering time by engineers not having to worry about this stuff. We'll centralize it and move it on, and that could be one way.
All right, I have no roadmap requests. That's what I'm taking home with me.
Anybody else? Okay.
No, thanks. Just like to say thanks to Fawaz and James. Awesome having you on stage. To everyone in the audience, warm up your questions. If you've heard of a gentleman named Armon, I think he's on stage next. You might want to ask a few more. So thanks, gentlemen, and
Thank
Charlie,
you.
back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.